Welcome to Basically Sci-Fi, the short storytelling podcast where we tell stories that you could basically call sci-fi. I'm Jared,
I'm Todd.
And I'm Adam.
and today we got a story from me. Back, my characters finally landed on a new home planet, and that's where this episode's taking place.
Yeah, that's right. They were all getting set up.
Yep.
Got some real Outriders vibes.
What? Really?
Remember that game we played I did like the demo
Yeah.
and watched the cutscene. So we played that for like 10 minutes.
I played.
I didn't get past that.
But yeah, and I guess they had. It starts out with them landing on a planet. Yeah.
Yeah. That's as far as I got, because then I turned it off. Because they're like, "Welcome to the wall high shooter," and I'm like, "That's not my bag, baby," and I left.
You talking about Gears of War?
No, something more recent.
Oh,
very similar to
recent.
Gears of War, but
there's a lot of them wall high shooters.
Yeah.
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 But not all of them start with settling a planet.
Not surprisingly.
It's like Space Civ.
Yeah, Space Civ.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a fine game that I never really
held
got
me
into.
over. Between 5 and 6, it held me over.
Yeah, I suppose. But I don't miss it.
Did they actually have a Space Civ, or was that just called Spore? The same guy, right?
What? No.
No, those are not the same people.
I played Spore.
Spore.
It also was not called Space Civ.
No, it was Beyond Earth.
Yeah.
Okay. God, I can't remember which game it is. There's
Spore
another
was
wonderful
Peter
game
Molyneux, though, and Civ is Sid Meier.
And Peter Molyneux is the man who taught me as a young boy reading like PC Gamer magazines to not ever have hope for the future.
Yeah. Just
I was there for the promise that the acorn would grow into a tree.
Jesus.
I was there. I told people at school. I didn't even have friends, and I told people at school.
Yeah. Most of his games are disappointing.
Black and White was fun.
Fable 2 was fun.
Fable is a good old game series. I will back
Welcome to the Peter Molyneux cast.
Yeah.
It's hard to spell the word Molyneux. Harder than you think it'd be, at least. I went to school with a guy whose last name was Molyneux, so...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Huh?
It's got a bunch of X's in it.
Yeah, tell him to go home and tell his dad to just give up.
Just fucking give up. Go home.
Give up. Why you always
Change
lie?
your goddamn
Peter
name.
Molyneux.
Change your fucking name to something that I can spell.
Molyneux should be spelled Molinu. Done.
There's a word I never really knew how to spell, and it's zhuzh.
Like new
How would you
metal.
spell that?
Shush.
When someone's like, I zhuzhed my hair. I'm like,
Not a real word.
It is a real
That's
word.
just a sound that Stamper makes during videos.
That can't be.
Anyways.
Anyways, speaking of other people's work, hey, Jared, you got a story for us?
Sure do.
About Outriders?
No, it's not. It's not
Oh.
the basic plot to Outriders. Because I never
Damn it.
finished that game.
That's even better. You can just like guess the ending, and it's
Yeah.
more authentic that way.
I like to start games and then do a fanfic of what the ending might be.
Now you're just talking about Sonic games, but
I don't know the last time I played a Sonic game, but I know the last time I consumed Sonic media.
Official or
Find out
unofficial?
about Todd the Hedgehog.
Yeah, they do that, don't they?
Yeah.
It was a good old Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
I do want to see that.
Oh yeah, I love what's his name.
Anyway, Jared's story.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my story this week is called All's Well That Ends with Only a Couple of Casualties.
Oh boy.
It had been a few months since the Ark ship had left the Albiffins on their new planet. Plum, Hong, the children of the Ark, and Happle had gone to seek new adventures, but this is not their story. It was decided by a committee that the new homeworld should be called 62 Alibiff, to prompt questions about whether this was really the 62nd planet in the Albiff system. Or maybe they had just tried settling 61 other times. But the people had taken an oath of secrecy, never to disclose the true answer to any potential visitors. Society was starting to come together. It took pretty much all of the first month to get everyone out of cryosleep, and then another month to convince everyone that the planet chosen was the right choice, and that the maintenance bots who lived with the defense robots were petty as fuck and would hurt them if pushed, but should also be allowed to go about their business for some reason. Some misinformation had been spread to the Frozen, because the events that led to deciding on this planet had been occasionally questionable. The idea that no one had children on the Ark was the hardest to pull off, and the fact that the 4 massive robots outside the capital could potentially destroy everything was deemed too stressful to lay on the populace just yet, so they were advertised as friends made along the way. On this particular day, Glorda was working with the defensive robots. It seemed the maintenance bots, now insisting on being called butler bots, had built houses for their largest counterparts.
It was random.
Yeah, it was their own
The
choice.
decision to be butlers was random.
Yeah, of course it was. Their own choice.
It makes sense why they're all so bad at their job, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Because nobody has any expectations of them. They're just like, we are the butler bots. Are you gonna help around here? No. Okay.
You. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had built houses for their larger counterparts, and were acting subservient to them, even though they were more self-sufficient than the other robots, who had some limited consciousness, but weren't really intended to interact with others outside of the scope of their duties. She walked into the house. Really, it was more of a palace, but the bots were insistent that it was merely a humble cabin home. Glorda was greeted immediately by a butler bot. Well, that is fucking rude. Don't you knock? Oh. Oh, sorry about that. Good. Now that you understand respectful boundaries, the fuck you want? I need to check in on the defense systems. They weren't intended to live so close to each other. I have to make sure that they won't accidentally perceive each other as threats. Glorda explained, not particularly hopeful that these self-declared butlers would care. Poosh! They're great friends. What would you know about it anyways? That's not what I meant. They may be friends, but I know what you mean. I am just being difficult. The masters say we should try to be nicer, but it's hard when you ask such stupid things.
It is hard.
Yeah. They both stared at each other for a minute before Glorda moved on. She made her way down a vast corridor, the type you would only expect to see in some overly fancy mausoleum created by ancient peoples, or, in fact, the house of a giant robot. As she walked down the hallway, the sounds of arguments got louder. Not surprising, given that the hundreds of butler bots in this house were all assholes, often as much to each other as anyone else. As she entered the main hall, Glorda saw that this wasn't the case. It was two of the giant robots arguing with each other. So much for everyone getting along, she thought to herself. The people are unlikely to give up their spare limbs for you to decorate with, one of them was saying to another.
Oh boy.
But that wall would look excellent covered in some spare heads and horns, another shouted back.
Oh God.
They were interrupted by a large crash. It was the unmistakable noise of a small makeshift spacecraft coming into the atmosphere a little too fast and beginning to break apart in the atmosphere.
Ah, that sound.
Yep. Glorda turned around and ran back outside, pushing her way past a pack of butler bots already taking bets on whether anyone would survive. As the ship landed, people began to gather around it, and a ramp began to descend before shuddering to a stop about halfway down, as a cloud of acrid, black smoke began pouring from the mechanism. The door opened, mostly, and out stepped Randall.
Randall, I knew it. I didn't want to cut it off.
Weary from his journey, and likely the recent crash he had had as well, he surveyed the growing crowd as a smile crossed his face at the sight of everyone. Then, seeing no better option, he jumped down. Badly misjudging the distance, he woke up several minutes later on the ground.
Oh God.
So what's the deal? Glorda asked, with a grin on her face, from seeing her old friend she had spent years thinking was dead. Before Randall could fully adjust to the waking world, he replied, yes? Well, I will start, Glorda said. Apple told us you were dead, and then it later came out that it was by his own hand. She started as she led him away from the crowd, who were mostly either working on putting out the fires or just staring at Glorda as she led him off. Oh, that. No, I wasn't dead. Took some running away from Gregorius, but eventually he calmed down and apologized. Then he began crying quite a lot for having tried to eat me. But how did you get off planet? Well, a few months after all of that, a ship touched down to pick up Gregorius. Apparently his people hadn't disappeared. They left him on that planet as a punishment for eating an entire city's worth of pickles a few years before.
Oh.
So they abandoned him alone on a planet to try and fend for himself? Yeah, they called it a timeout, then immediately neglected to account for his impact on the other world. Their conversation was cut short by the arrival of another ship, this one landing more gently. Did you have someone follow you? Glorda asked Randall. No, I don't know who that is. Out of the ship stepped some guy. He had robes that reached the ground in a style above functionality kind of way, where if he weren't careful, he definitely would trip over said robes. Glorda
He's
and
basically a wizard.
Maybe. Glorda and Randall made their way to the figure, as he made his way towards the crowd of onlookers, who were happy to take a break from cleaning up after the crash to gawk at a stranger. Hear me and despair.
That's never good.
Yeah. He paused just long enough for someone to interrupt him with a, well, what is it? We should be despairing then. He tried to ignore this interruption, but still glanced around the crowd to see if he could spot who it was. Things which the mind can barely comprehend until pain has broken it. Things? Really? You couldn't come up with a better descriptor than things? This time, the voice in the crowd stepped forward. It was Frunga. Did you even scan the planet before coming down here to threaten us? Confused by the backtalk from a civilization that shouldn't be this advanced, he tried to continue his sermon. You misunderstand me. I mean not to threaten you, but inform you of your doom. Sounds an awful lot like a threat to me, Frunga said, with some approval from the gathered crowd. I think it's time for you to go. Well, you can't say I didn't warn you, the stranger said, as he quickly stepped back towards his ship. Before he got there, one of the giant defense robots lumbered over the hill and asked, You want me to take care of him? No, he was just going, Frunga said. Indeed. Sorry for the intrusion, the stranger said, quite frightened by the giant robot staring him down. Glorda turned back to Randall, but couldn't see him. They must have gotten separated in the commotion. There wasn't time to search for him, though. As the visitor took off, the defense robot decided it was better safe than sorry, and took the matters into its own hands, possibly just taking out the frustration from its current living situation by shooting down the stranger's ship. For a second time in as many hours, a spaceship crashed into the capital city of 62 Alabith that day. Glorda rushed over to the new crash site to see if anyone was hurt, besides the stranger. That dude was dead as fuck.
Okay, yeah.
Frunga was already there, muttering to herself unspeakable threats towards the very nature of artificially intelligent life. She was really just frustrated that her own creations were just out here killing people. Remarkably, when she arrived at the crash site, Frunga found no one injured. There were ruined buildings, street market stalls in disarray, and small fires everywhere. But everyone, it seemed, had been out helping clear the crash site or watching others help clean. They had all just watched as everything they built over the last few months was destroyed needlessly. When Frunga finished digging through the wreckage, she went over to Glorda, standing with some of the shop owners talking about the efforts that would be needed to rebuild the small district that was just wiped out. Sorry to interrupt, but I found this on that thing's ship. Frunga held up a small disc. What's that then? Glorda was a bit distracted by all the commotion. It's a communications device. We need to break into it, make sure no one else is coming. Well, do you need any help? Glorda asked, wondering how she would actually be able to do anything about it with everything else going on at the moment. Sure, send some scientists to my workshop. I'll get into it with some time, though, if you can't spare anyone. Oh man, that's way better than what I was thinking. Sure, I can send other people. People other than myself. Where's your workshop, though? No one really knew where Frunga had gone until recently when she'd returned to the city, bartering some new inventions for food and rubber bands. As it turned out, she had spent much of her time away searching for a spot to set up a shop that had sufficient forestry around it to provide shade and concealment from prying eyes. The swampy areas had drawn much of the population, so the spot she had settled was on a drier hill with almost no muck, just the type of place Alabithans would avoid at all costs. To be sure she went unnoticed, however. Frunga had incorporated some of the cloaking tech. She gave Glorda the exact location and headed back with the alien disc in hand. Glorda set about dispersing the onlookers and setting everyone willing about cleaning up the combined wreckages. When she was done, she found Randall hanging back, watching the goings-on with a decided interest. But it seemed nobody around recognized him, so he was feeling a bit ignored. It amazed him how adept at dealing with the unseemly mob Glorda was. When they first met, she'd been a quiet person from the cloaking ship engineers, who mainly seemed to be Plum's wrangler. This was years ago, however, and in the time he had spent with her before his disappearance, it became clear that the ability to manage Plum on his own was directly translatable to coordinating the efforts of resettling an entire planet's population. The matter of calming a single street that had been leveled was nothing for her. Even still, as she caught up to him, Randall could see the visible pity on people's faces for her. Even they must understand the struggles she was going through on a daily basis. Lost you there for a bit, Glorda said, running up to Randall, trying to hide the exhaustion he'd already spotted. Well, it seems to be the only thing you lost, so I take it you're no longer in charge of Plum's day-to-day. What is he up to these days that doesn't require wrangling? Glorda led him back to her house, where she explained the departure of Plum and the children and Happle, as well as the success of setting up the security robots, and all of the rest of the events that had led to their current situation. By the time they were caught up, the sun had set, and they were through a couple vintage bottles of wine from the final productive years on Alabif. It wasn't the finest vintage, according to the experts, but as a social lubricant, it worked as well as any other. And there we leave the reunited couple, to do what they will for the night. The next day, however...
Yeah.
The next day, however, Glorda went back to the giant robots and convinced them to move to different continents so they could have their own territory. It would also separate the butler bots, which could only be good for the local Albifan populace. And at the same time, Frunga was meeting with some of the reverse engineers to get to work on the destroyed ship's communication systems. Must those guns constantly be pointed at us? Gordon asked. Oh, don't worry about it. As long as you don't threaten me, they'll leave you well enough alone, Frunga replied dismissively. Are you sure they won't misinterpret gestures? If I were that bad at programming, you wouldn't be here, as there would be no hope in recovering the information on this disk. That seemed reasonable to the gathered for some reason, and so the engineers set to work cracking the disk, which was completed after a long night of drinking and engineering. The end.
Ooh, engineering always involves drinking, right?
Sure.
One of the best engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Well, I'm really surprised to find that Randall ate an entire planet's worth of pickles.
No.
But if I remember right, not Randall. Who's that?
Gregorius.
Gregorius. Gregorius has to ask permission, which means someone told him to eat them pickles.
Ooh.
Or at least someone said yes.
Yeah.
I think that was his thing. He's like, can I eat this? And then you're not supposed to say yes.
I think that's what he was in timeout for, was that he didn't ask permission and just ate them. So they punished him until he learned how to ask.
Either way, I can see why he's there. He tends to be uncontrollable. So
yeah.
Well, I liked
that timeout. That's funny. There were several good little chuckles had in there. That was a very funny episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Came out all right, I think.
Yep. I was happy to see the return of Randall. This time actually talking about Randall.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, I don't know. You see, it's just me. I was talking about this with one of my students recently about how maybe it's again just my personality, but he was smiling, and I find that disconcerting.
Oh.
Oh, you don't trust anyone who's smiling?
No, I'm like, there's nothing to be smiling. What are you smiling about? He was smiling, and then he disappeared, and then seduced the president scientist.
I mean, they had a relationship before.
Yeah, I know, but I'm filling in blanks because I.
Also, I don't think he was smiling. I don't trust people. She was smiling.
Okay, I maybe misheard it wrong, but I think he was observing and smiling at one point, and I was
when he first landed, he was smiling because he finally found his people.
Okay, I suppose that's a reason to smile, but I probably would have been like, "Why'd y'all leave me in the first place?" I might see. I don't trust him.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess you don't have to.
I can tell that I'm wrong. But I mean, he showed up. He was he was creepy, because smiling is
Yeah.
creepy, and then
Mhm.
another creep followed right behind him, and he's like, I don't know him. I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe he does, though.
Maybe he does.
Maybe he does. He doesn't, but
Yeah.
maybe he does.
See?
He doesn't, but...
Yep,
Yeah.
things are coming together, but I like nothing better than how the Butler bots became the Butler bots. It's because they said they were. The end.
It was
That's
their
the
choice.
best.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just wanted to be.
I'm very
Yep.
happy that now that Plum is out of the picture, there is absolutely no mishaps going on with any robots at all. And there will never be.
Yeah. Except when that one shot down that ship because
Yeah.
it looked suspicious.
When they need someone to come reprogram, like for real, the giant robots, and no one's around that can do that.
Well, Frunga's the one that built the giant robots, so...
Oh god, but
She's
when Frunga
around.
gets old and dies, and then the Butler bots reprogram the giant robots for fun.
I mean,
So they can
presumably by
cross.
that point, someone will have learned how to do it.
We hope.
Yeah.
It's kind of an important task to be left to one single person.
Well, you know what they say about people who presume. It makes a pr out of you and me.
Yeah. Yeah, that.
That thing.
Yep. I don't know what it means, but that's what people say. I've
Yeah.
heard it somewhere.
Definitely.
I don't want to be a pro.
I want to be a president. Anyway.
Yeah, so...
I don't know. I don't have much else for comments. I was
No.
kind of just listening. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I said all my comments as well.
Alright. Well, it was a short episode then.
Yeah.
But,
That's
Sorry.
fine.
no?
We can talk about something really
Alright.
morbid at the end of here if you want.
No.
Okay.
That'll be fine. Thanks for listening. You can like, comment, subscribe if you want. Join our Discord. I don't know. Nobody has, so I have no hope that anyone will.
Hey, I joined.
It's there though
It's there
for
though.
when we pop off.
Yeah. Which probably isn't gonna happen, but you know.
I thought we
Anyways,
said no morbid stuff at the end.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, when I said no morbid stuff, I meant more like dogs in crates morbid, but you know.
Oh God.
Anyways, we will see you next time with a story from Todd.
Yeah.
Woo!
Goodbye for now.
Yep. Later.
Later.